Mga kababayan, if you're just joining us, we just announced that Kababayan Today can now be seen all over the world, as well as here in America, courtesy of our media partner, Kapatid TV5. Kaya naman, we have Kulturahan with Gio reporting from San Francisco. As we know, maraming po tayong mga kababayan dyan sa San Francisco, and we want to share with all of you the important events for our Filipino-American community. Here is Gio Ortega to tell you about the Filipino-American International Book Festival happening at the San Francisco Main Library next month.
We then head over to San Francisco's main library, where I spoke with fellow Pinoy authors about this year's Filipino-American International Book Festival. Filipino-American writers and artists, why is that important? I mean, there's so many obvious reasons, of course, but why is that important for us as Filipino, as Americans, and as Filipino-Americans?
You know, I'd say that the Philippine communities all around the United States are pretty active, especially in the West Coast, there are so many Filipinos in the United States, and there are so many events and organizations that deal with food, dance, every other aspect, you know, music, right?
Yeah.
But not really one specific organization deals specifically with the literary, you know. And so PAWA actually started out as Filipino-American women writers, and they had two branches, one here in Northern California and one in Southern California, headed by Cecilia Brainard.
That's right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And at some point, the organization in Southern California closed, but this one continued. And at some point, according to some of the former members, old members, they said that, yeah, the men, you know, would drive their wives to the meetings and were actually also involved in the arts. And finally said, you know, this should just be open up to Filipino-Americans and Filipino-American women and writers. It's Filipino-American writers and artists. That's how PAWA was born. The original one was PAWWA, and the current one is PAWA, Filipino-American Writers and Artists.
There you go.
Yeah, so we've been around for actually over a decade, you know, promoting the arts. We collaborate with many local organizations.
Cool Arts,
Center, Bindlestiff, and Fascina, and you name it, all the organizations around here, you know, all cultural organizations. And we put out readings, book launches, we publish, we give scholarships.
What do you tell your students when, you know, they take your classes? What is Filipino writing? You know, I mean, the diaspora is massive in a global sense because we're all over the place. So what are some of the things that you instill in those students?
It's true about, you know, people, we're always seeking to define what we are and who we are. And I think that the answer to that is ever-changing. We're not a separate literature. We consider ourselves part of the mainstream literature, so we don't have to separate ourselves. So what do I tell my students? I try to instill in them all the time to honor their own voice and to know that their voice is valid. And you know, they listen and follow me because I myself discovered my own voice, and part of it is through being affiliated with PAWA and receiving support and affirmation of my own voice. And honestly, I wrote my first manuscript after I returned from the Philippines, my first travel to the Philippines at the age of 56. And at that time, the whole world opened up for me, and I thought, who am I going to tell? And when I returned, all of a sudden I realized where I belong, I felt my place. And so I feel like that as an educator, when I found my place, I was also able to help, you know, my students and to assure them of their place.
The next generation has a voice, and I love that you say that to your students. I think I'm going to start saying that.
Yes, and we have to be able to have that ourselves first, and that's something I realized I was very much older when I learned that and experienced it, but it's through being able to connect with a community where I feel that it is, I'm part of its definition.
What are some of the events and the panels? I was just listening to the panels. How are you going to fit all these panels in those 3 days? Because it sounds really fascinating. so many activities going on.
One of the events that we always have is Hot Off the Press. That's usually hosted by Cecilia Brainer.
Okay.
And it's readings from the film authors who have published in the last 2 years. So that should be interesting in itself. Yeah.
Also looking at Filipino-American history, because I guess one of the things now that we look forward to is there's so many more Filipino academics that are getting into the humanities and getting into the history. So now they can kind of present our own history, you know, here in the Americas from a Filipino point of view. So we're beginning to narrate and frame our history as opposed to other people talking about our history. But now we are the ones who are framing our history and writing it in our own voice. Yeah.
We also have a Philippine textiles panel. If you haven't checked it out, you should check out thehinabiproject.org. It's a new project by PAWA, and it's called the Hinabi, Hinabi, thehinabiproject.org. And it's the art of Philippine textiles, where actually from September 24th to October 11th at the Asian Art Museum of San Francisco, we will have a piña education display. So it will present how the history of piña, the production, and samples of antique to modern types of piña.
Iniimbitahan namin po kayo na magkasama tayo sa 3rd Filipino-American International Book Festival mula sa October 2nd hanggang October 4 sa San Francisco Main Library, bukas na bukas.
Abangan niyo po kami sa aming pagbabalik dito sa Kababayan Today.